All right. Somehow this has never happened. Howie Long is here. I've had his son's been on the pod. His son was with the Ringer for a little bit. You have two sons who are now former football players, although I'll believe the former. I don't know. Do they come? One of them comes back. Who's the better one to come? Better odds to come back, Chris or Kyle?
Chris won't. Chris is two things. He's hard to kill, and it's impossible for him to let it go.
Right.
He's one of those guys that just wanted to play forever, and I get it. Kyle is a guy who I think needed more of a destination on a weekly basis. I don't think idle time really served him well. And he's on the CBS pre-show, which is, I think not a lot of people see it, but I think the people who need to see it. And he's got a real gift for it. But once again, he texted me the other day, said, I'm 298, I feel good. I'm like, it's hard. You see guys go back, and we've seen it. We've seen it in football, and it's like Gronk. Gronk was like the '66 Cadillac that got parked in the garage for like 2 years, and nobody started it up. And the first 4 or 5 weeks was like, because I like Gronk. I'm a big Gronk fan. He's a lot of fun, but you worry about guys when it looks like you're lumbering. And I think there was some of that early on. And I think last week was kind of a game where, I'm not sure that he's fully healthy when you're spiking the ball with your left arm. That gives me concern. But he looked more like Gronk, and I think the car kind of warmed up.
Well, Gronk is my favorite Patriot of all time. That's my favorite team. I loved him the most. And it was painful to watch him those first couple of weeks.
Wait a second. Sam Bam,
Sam Bam's top five. No, Sam Bam's top five. Sam Bam was good. No, Gronk was he brought so much joy. He's, I think, the best at his position ever. He was certainly, him and John Hanna and Brady, we had three iconic guys at their positions, right? But I could see those first couple weeks. It's like, this isn't Gronk. And last Sunday, he looked like Gronk. At least 80%
it looked like
of it.
Gronk, and the kind of that drag across the middle, and that's his kind of route, and of course the touchdown was vintage Gronk, and I'm happy for him. I hope he holds up, and I think both Tom and Gronk made really. I think Tom led the way, but I think Tom choose wisely. That's the phrase from one of the Indiana Jones movies, and I think Tom really chose wisely because it's a team that's built to go.
Well, and they've been really careful with Gronk, because I think one of the mistakes the Pats made, he took a lot of hits, and especially he was so big at some point that guys were diving at his knees, and that's how he hurt.
Every time.
He had one of the knee injuries. I think they've been careful about how they're using him. He's not going across the middle and just getting clocked, right? He's always drifting toward the back of the end zone or toward the sideline, that kind of stuff.
He's one of those guys where it's kind of like Cam. The first time I saw Cam, it was at a Pro Bowl. Kyle was playing in the Pro Bowl, and I saw him, and it was almost like I just had Tourette's. I said, golly, you're a big son of a bitch.
Right.
And it's like, I've never seen a quarterback like that.
Yeah.
And so proportioned, and 6'5", 255, and all of it. And Gronk's another one of those guys, until you walk up on him, you don't really get the perspective of how big he is. And I think because of the rule changes and the way the game is officiated now, you've taken the head away, and you can't go anywhere near it. And particularly with a big guy like Gronk, they're going right for the legs. And those leg hits, every time I see one, I just wince. It was kind of like the Dak injury. The Dak injury had a really profound impact on me. I didn't see it until I landed here in Arizona, and my phone was blowing up from the guys at work. And I saw it, and it was kind of like the Joe Theismann thing, where it's like, I don't want to see it again. if you've ever been injured, if you've ever been operated on, if, and our family has been operated on a lot. When I said this Sunday, when my two boys went down, it wasn't that kind of impact where, every time your kid goes down the pile, you're like, get up, get up, get up, get up. And you breathe a little bit easier when they do get up. He wasn't getting up, Dak. And, and you take the dynamic of the contract or lack of contract and the franchise tag, which I'm not a fan of, never have been. And I don't know whether it was the Cowboys or it was, the agent or whatever. They just couldn't get a deal done. And my thought process has always been this, and I respect Dak for betting on himself, but I'm just of the thought process that you bet on yourself in basketball and baseball.
Totally agree.
You don't bet on yourself in football, knowing how quickly it can go. And I said that to Kyle, and Kyle said, neck fusion, shoulder surgery, elbow surgery, knee surgery, ankle reconstruction. And, they're wondering why you can't block the 3 technique,
Right.
It's like, hello.
Well, Gronk, I mean, he had 2 really bad ones because he played the Super Bowl with like a fractured elbow, whatever that was, or fractured forearm.
That elbow doesn't look right.
Yeah,
it's never been the same. Left at the corner.
Yeah. But you talked about Tampa, how good they looked. So we're at the point of the season. We have 6 weeks under our belt. Mm-hmm. Kind of know what we have in some degrees. I think with quarterbacks, we always know. Well, we know in this respect, there's 4 defenses that I think have kind of stood out, right? Tampa, Chicago, Baltimore,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And I think those 4 defenses at least look like playoff defenses. That doesn't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I don't really see another defense that I like as much as those 4. Do you?
No, I don't. And it's interesting because if you make a chart, and I was sitting here before we get on, and I made a chart of who do I know is a true kind of they're for real. The Chiefs, what the Chiefs did last week, you go to the game 2 weeks ago versus the Raiders, you get one-dimensional, you're putting a lot of pressure on your offensive line, you're putting a lot of pressure on your quarterback. When you're multi-dimensional like that and you run the ball almost 50 times, and Hilaire, I loved the pick, and I loved him going to Andy Reid because I was thinking Westbrook, I'm thinking, that style of guy, only thicker and more physical. And I think we saw all that, and now they add another weapon. And, the defense is, I think Spagnuolo's got it. They picked it up last year towards the end of the year. They weren't good, then they were okay. And at the end of the year and going into the Super Bowl, they picked it up. I think what we saw at the end of the Super Bowl, closing the game out with the run game, was a kind of a change of pattern and philosophy for Andy. Andy's always been a guy that wants to throw the ball, and it's interesting because he's an offensive lineman from back in the day. But getting the run game going, that makes them near impossible to defend. Tennessee, I like. Tannehill, it's an indictment of Miami. It's an indictment of the staff. It's how could he be so good in Tennessee? And we're seeing it again now this year. And I know
the hits keep coming with Adam Gase.
I know
we're running out of ways to talk about how terrible he is as a head coach.
And I like Adam, and it's almost like when you see the post-game press conferences, it's like someone end it for me.
Yeah,
someone stop it. Like throw the towel in. It's a prideful fighter that just wants to keep going until somebody throws the towel in mercifully from the corner. Yeah. I'm not sure what the situation is. I like Joe Douglas a lot. I think they've got a boatload of picks. Be interesting to see if they're in the sweepstakes for the quarterback.
They're in it. I would say they're the favorite.
Let's say they do. They're in position to do that.
Yeah.
What do? Do you trade Darnold and you load up on more picks and you've got the kid at number 1? I think so. But I'm thinking Chiefs, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh. And then I've got the column on the right, the Ravens, The run game's not what it was. Lamar's not throwing with the same kind of accuracy. The Colts, last week was kind of a microcosm of where they are. And I'm a big Phillip Rivers fan. I don't know him. He talks a lot of crap. I get it. He's one of those guys that he's just like an old cowboy who's still on the rodeo circuit, and he looks a little banged up, a little weathered. And last week it was a tale of two halves, and I'm not sure about them. The Cards are a team that are they the team that just thumped the Cowboys, or are they the team that loses to whoever? And Frisco, I always say, because I think Kyle Shanahan is special. And I think if the quarterback can stay healthy and the run game is effective, and some of their young players on defense can come around. And then the middle column, the Seahawks are great. Russell's great. Metcalf's great. I get all that. Their defense is horrific. Can you win with a one-dimensional team?
Yeah.
If history tells us anything, you can't. And, I've got Green Bay in there. Was last week an anomaly? Or was it the 13-3 Packers who went to San Francisco during the middle of the season and got thumped, and then got thumped again in the playoffs? Does that style of football match up poorly with them? And the Saints, I don't know where Drew is. And the Michael Thomas thing is a concern. The one game kind of internal suspension, and I put Bill in that middle category.
You have to.
I think last week was kind of a byproduct of the Patriots are all about meet, prepare, walk through, train, weight room, X's and O's, and all the things that you talked about with them not taking necessarily good care of Gronk. They're a team that is unrelenting, and that starts with the head coach. And if you're looking for a game plan, and people said, who's their defense have? I mean, half the front seven opted out. All the really key players opted out. There's a reason why Bill's game plan is in the Hall of Fame versus Buffalo. I mean, there's Bill and, Sean Payton. There's a couple other coaches who I like, but Bill is personnel, salary cap, offense, defense. He can coach every position on the field. He's in a different stratosphere than everyone else.
So 2 things off your list, which I enjoyed. I would put Tennessee in the middle because I have no idea if their defense is any good at all. Like, to me, what you said about Seattle, I feel like you could have said about Tennessee.
It's nowhere near that extreme.
You don't think so?
It's manageable down there. And the other part of it is, and you being a New England guy, you look at you look at Bill Walsh's coaching tree.
Yeah.
You go, my gosh, there's a lot of great coaches come off that tree. Now look at Bill's tree. And right now, I think we're looking at, I think Flores and Vrabel for sure. That move Vrabel made last week to, purposely, draw the penalty, stop the clock.
He's done that like 5 times.
And people have said that when he was there, he was the guy that questioned the game plan, or he was that smart. He could go back and forth with the coordinator, and they knew he was going to be a coach. But those 2 guys, I think, have a shot at being really special coaches. It's hard to find guys out of that staff who have moved on and done well.
I've been blown away by Flores. He was awesome against the Pats last year. I also like the timing. I want to talk about the Tua thing in 1 second, but I like the timing of when they did it, because I had that Jets-Dolphins game on because there was only 2 games because the NFL did the dumb thing where they only had the 2 games in the late time slot.
It was bizarre.
Fitzpatrick was bad.
We were watching rodeo. There was like rodeo in the corner. I was watching bull riders get killed. I said, shut that off.
I had the movie Face Off on my 3rd TV just because I was like, oh, that'll be a fun one.
That's horrible.
Yeah. And then Fitzpatrick, who was bad in that Jets game. And that was the first time just kind of watching, like, man, why don't they just play Tua? What are they waiting for? Especially with the Herbert thing, where Herbert looks so good, and it's like,
that's a whole nother conversation. But
we could have it now.
I'd like to. Well, let's deal with Tua first. Tua, it was all about a couple things. One is Tua right physically, and they're seeing him every day, and they know it better than anyone. And has Tua fully grasped the concepts of our offense? Can he go out there and defend himself intellectually pre-snap? Because so much of the game is pre-snap. I mean, it's whether it's Tom or Drew or you name it, the great quarterbacks. Peyton was like that. It just, they beat you pre-snap. And it was interesting because there's all this pre-snap motion, jet sweeps, all that stuff. Peyton did none of that because Peyton wanted a static defense pre-snap. He wanted to know exactly what he was getting. If you send somebody in motion, they make adjustments. You've got to recheck the defense. And I'm not sure that he was comfortable with that. But Tua, to me, was, I think, the organization. And it's interesting because you can trace the dysfunction with teams that are poor over a period of time. And I think with them right now, the GM and I think the head coach, there's a plan, and they had an idea of exactly what they wanted to do. Yeah. And I think right now was the time. If he was right physically and he was right mentally, let's put him in. Because all of a sudden, we thought Buffalo was going to run away with this thing. If you're looking at week one and you say, Buffalo is going to dominate the Patriots, this is the year. They've been getting their lunch money taken for 15 years, and now's the time. And, I think New England kind of surprised some people early on. And I think Miami is maybe a 2-0 away from competing in that division.
Easier schedule, too. I mean, Buffalo could have 3 losses right now if that Rams game, whatever that'll happen on that pass interference.
What a game
play.
that was.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Great game.
The other team you didn't mention, which we talked about, the 4 defenses that stood out, Chicago. So do you have them left column, middle column, or right column?
I have them in the middle. I have them in the middle column. I'm not sure whether they're good, but they're floating between the legit and the okay, because the offense is, when you're an offense, here's the thing. When you got an offense like that, you're putting so much pressure on your defense to be great every single week. In a day and age when, defenses have been kind of legislated out and, everything is put in place for the offense to be dynamic. And we've seen that through the first 5 weeks of the season. The scoring is off the charts, touchdowns, the whole thing. And I get it. People want to see that, and it sells tickets and puts people in the seats at home on TV. I think it just puts so much pressure on your defense when you're out there scoring 17, 18 points a week, and quarter to quarter, you don't know what you're going to get. And some of that is, they lose Cohen. That's a big loss for them. They lose 2 of their offensive linemen. That's a loss. And I think Nick is a guy that, Nick is that guy in Vegas when he's hot, just step away from the table. When he's not, get him away from the table. And I think we've seen that not just week to week. We've seen it quarter to quarter, half.
I was going to say, he can be a different guy in the second quarter than he was in the first. It's bizarre.
Right. I think they came from behind in the fourth quarter and 3 games down 13 or more points. I mean, you can't sustain that. Not with a quarterback that's good and sometimes hot, but sometimes is not. I just don't believe in that.
Well, I like to gamble from time to time, as people on this podcast, they might know. Every year there's a team that just sticks it to me. And this year it's the Bears. And, the Lions week 1, ridiculous comeback, no business. You're like, all right, that's an aberration. But then last week, I really like that Carolina team. I think they're well coached. And the Bears played really well. Like they really shut down their offense. I think Carolina, even without McCaffrey,
and they hung
their
around.
Offense is good. Yeah,
they hung around, and I think Moore had three or four drops.
He did
one in the end zone, which you're like,
yeah, it was a bad one.
Second, you catch 100 of these a day.
Yeah,
and then of course the fourth down play that ended the game, where it's, okay, maybe the ball's a little bit inside. I don't know. Make a catch. I just, for a team like that to be where they are without McCaffrey, and I think their running back played extremely well and ran into a defense that it's kind of like Green Bay going down to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
That group down there, Todd Bowles, you think the Jets would like to have Todd Bowles right now?
It's a tough one.
That defense is real. And those two linebackers, they fly to the ball, and they're coming. They're bringing it when they get there. They're, as the Mike Tyson thing, they have bad intentions. That young corner Davis is. I just think they have a mix of the Sioux and JPP and then the young players, and at the second level and then on the back end. And I think Todd Bowles is a really, really coach. And that they go back all the way to Temple, Bruce Arians and him. I think he played for Bruce at Temple.
Yeah, when I'm looking at defenses, when I'm watching 10 hours of football every Sunday, are you getting a push? Are you pushing the offensive line back? Are guys flying around the ball? And then I was like on the sidelines. There's always like those 2 or 3 plays, big hit, and everyone on the sidelines locked in because they know they have a good defense. And they check all 3 of those.
The Ramsey hit versus against
Golden Tate. Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, the whole side lit up. I mean, hey, they've got 2 generational players with the Rams. Whether you like Ramsey or you agree with his antics or any of that, let's separate church and state. Ramsey is a pretty good corners. Mike Haynes was so good, it was boring. And he never, no fist pumps, no jumping up and down. Mike just shut you down and went back to the huddle. And he didn't even have to go in the huddle because we were in cover 1. Lester and him didn't need to be, and they were 2 totally different guys. Lester was big and physical and Vic Vegas, and he gambled on tendencies. Mike just said, whatever you do, I'm going to mirror it. This kid Ramsey is special. And of course, Aaron is, I think when it's all said and done, Aaron will be the best defensive tackle to ever play the game.
Wow. Why'd you have to bring up Mike Haynes? I was having such a good time.
Yeah, we got that one. It's one of those trades. It's kind of like when we traded Lachey for Jay Schrader. It was one of those kind of trades. It was like, wait a second.
Well, the Mike Haynes was worse because he was on the Patriots, I think, for five years, maybe 6, and they were just being cheap. And he was the best cornerback in the league. He also was like a kick returner the first year, and he was amazing at that too. But he was just like lights out. He's
one of the best football players I've ever.
And then you guys
around.
Get him, and we had the whole history with the Raiders from the Sugar Bear Hamilton game, the roughing the passer on 3rd and 17.
Hey, we had more
worst football loss ever.
Yeah, we had more history than that. It was like there was an article in the Boston Globe, I think, the week we were playing the Patriots in the playoffs, and we laid an egg, fumbled at the end of the game, and lost in the playoffs to the Patriots, and they went on to play the Bears. And it would have been a much better matchup, us versus the Bears.
Yeah.
And
not for me. I really enjoyed beating the Raiders, but
yeah. So no, it was great. I'm sure for all New England fans. I get it. But it was so funny because I had done an interview with the Boston Globe, and the Patriots didn't even have me up for an interview. Didn't have not a coach, not a scout. Anybody came by to even see me, and it was
what you were like a 2nd round pick.
No, I get it, but they didn't. They were not interested.
Wow.
And I think the gist of the article was the Patriots don't look at local guys like Freddie Schmerlis or, fill in the blank. So this guy was walking up and down the sidelines yelling at me. And I'm saying, who the hell is this guy? He looks like he's drunk. Why is he on the sideline? He's on.
Oh no, is this the owner's son, Patrick Sullivan?
So he walks up to me and says, now at the end of the game, he wants to make nice. And I'm wired a little different at that time. I mean, I'm 60 now and I'm a lot calmer than I was then.
Right.
And I was always trained. My helmet didn't come off until I got in the locker room. And I always walk out the field with Matt Millen. And he came up and wanted to make nice, and I kind of blew him up. He said, "You don't know who I am?" And I'm like, "No, who are you?" He said, "I own the team." I said, and I don't know how I came up with this so quickly. I think I said something like, "Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but unless your old man died last night, you don't own shit."
That's a good one.
He put his hand up to kind of, I don't know whether he was going to grab my jersey or try to, and Matt Millen saw it and thought he was a drunk and clubbed him over the head. Now, allegedly clubbed him over the head with a helmet.
Let me tell you something.
There was blood everywhere. And the irony is the guy that grabbed me from behind was, an off-duty cop from Boston who I think my uncle knew because my uncle worked in Station 1. And it was just ironic. It was, and years later, I still see him periodically, and he seems like a nice guy, and I think it was one of those moments we'd all like to have maybe turn out a little different.
Let me tell you something. That was not one of the 1,000 dumbest things that Sullivan did in the state of Massachusetts, confronting two Raiders. I don't even know if it cracked. I'm sure there was more dumb things by Sullivan, but it's top 5,000.
Do you know something that I don't know? Do you have a weapon in your pocket? Or
oh my God.
Because you're not kicking my ass.
When I was growing up as a Patriot fan, the only good real chance we had was that year against the 76 team when they stayed 3rd and 17, and that hung over us, and then that team fell apart. So then those playoffs would beat the Dolphins and you guys, and it was like, oh my God, team of destiny. And then the Bears beat us by 36 points in the Super Bowl.
The only professional football game I ever went to, I fractured my ankle my senior year. I was living with an uncle out in Milford. And somehow, I don't know who got tickets. We were up in the nosebleeds for the Patriots versus Raiders in 1976.
Oh, we killed them that game.
Killed them.
Yeah.
But I do remember this. I remember them running out of the tunnel and thinking, oh my God, it's like a biker gang. And then I get drafted by them. I looked up on the map where Oakland was, and it was maybe my 3rd plane ride or 4th plane ride in my life, and went out to Oakland and made $38,000, bought a used Coupe de Ville, and was on top of the world.
And then they had the Oakland to LA move.
Out of
Oakland
nowhere. LA, and then
you were
LA back to Oakland, and then Oakland to Vegas. And, it was really a shame because I think in a perfect world, I think everyone in the organization and certainly the players that played in Oakland would love to have the team in Oakland in a new stadium. That wasn't happening. That wasn't a reality. And anyone that tells you any different is crazy. And I think Mark made every effort to get that done. And the league, when they went through the whole move to LA and they gave the kind of the Rams and, that whole thing down there, he just decided he's going to go to Vegas. And it was such an Al move. I'm going to take the team to Vegas. And
that's why I didn't mind it. It was they're going to leave Oakland. Vegas seemed like the one other place that made sense.
Plus, I think the team it's kind of a regional team. It's kind of the Raiders are a Southwestern team.
Yeah.
So, you've got Vegas, you've got, parts of Arizona, you've got Northern California, you've got Southern California. And I think people from LA are going to drive the 4 or 5 hours to Vegas and go to the games every week. And the stadium is. Have you been there?
No, I'm dying to go though. It seems cool.
It's amazing. It's the perfect state. The LA stadium is very LA.
Yeah.
This looks like the Death Star landed in Vegas.
I'm sure it looks cool from when you're flying in on the plane. It must jump out. I had a couple off the wall things for you.
Yeah.
So with football, when we in basketball, we just went through LeBron wins the title. We have to do the whole LeBron Jordan GOAT debate again. And football doesn't really operate like that. I think we've decided Brady's the GOAT quarterback. Rice is still the GOAT receiver. And LT is the GOAT outside linebacker, pass rusher. And those are really the only
I will
three GOATs we have, right?
I will tell you this. I would watch film when I was playing, and two guys that were the most dominant guys I saw on film. Dwight Stevenson from the Miami Dolphins at center. He did things at center that it was like he was playing Pop Warner football. He was that dominant.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where they would just take me from in and have me drop down on center because, he would disrupt our defense. He'd go first level, second level, and then on some plays get to the third level and pick up a safety. LT was the best by a wide margin.
Right.
I mean, forget about records, forget about, Super Bowls and all that. If you put on the film, he's the most dominant front seven player I've ever seen.
And Belichick is passionate about that too. He's same point.
And played angry and, the whole thing. And was one of those guys that you could lock. There's very few guys that are like this. I'd say Dion, Barry Sanders, LT. You could lock those guys in a room for like 2 months with nothing but a TV or refrigerator and maybe throw some food in there periodically and let them out after 3 months and they could walk on the field, put on a uniform, and dominate a game.
Right.
LT, they keep saying the next LT. I'm like,
yeah, it's not happening.
Haven't seen him. Now, Aaron Donald is like that at defensive tackle.
Okay. So you would have him number one right now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And the separation is who's number two?
Well, that's how I feel about Rice, right? I still feel like I think you could make a case Moss was the most talented receiver we've had, but Rice's resume is just so far ahead of everybody else.
Randy by a wide margin, and but it's the perfect it's the perfect storm of circumstance. Is Jerry Rice if he goes to Minnesota? Is Jerry Rice if he goes to Detroit? I think he's probably, a Hall of Fame player. But when you go to San Francisco and you're in that system and you're playing for Bill Walsh and your quarterbacks are Joe Montana and Steve Young, Jerry's Jerry, and there's no disputing that. And I'm not an expert on wide receivers. I'm not pretending to be. The numbers today are so hard to read. Everyone has 100 catches. Everyone has 95 catches. Some have 116. Thomas down in New Orleans had what?
117, yeah.
117. I mean, Terry threw. Here's how different the game is. Put this in perspective. Steelers were a dominant team. I was at Villanova when the Steelers were dominant. And, took my number because of Joe Green and, was really obsessed with all that. Their offensive line averaged 253 pounds.
Right.
The biggest offensive line in the league now averages 325.
Ugh.
Joe Green was 275, 280, 282. The guy that's playing that position now is 320, 330. The game is bigger, stronger, faster. The game is challenging defenses as much horizontally as they are vertically now, where you've got a smoke screen out to a wide receiver and he's one block away from being one-on-one with a safety. And if you don't get out there, which I think wears defenses down, it's one of the reasons why numbers were so high the first 5 weeks. No real training camp, no real preseason games, no real OTAs. And usually defenses are ahead of offenses, and the script got flipped. And I think part of it was just what I'm talking about, smoke screens, the jet sweeps, all that where you're forcing big people to play horizontally. They're used to going vertically and playing in a box. The box got expanded to the width of the field. So I think defenses got worn down.
Well, and you could also take chances over the middle of the field and not worry about murdering your wide receiver or tight end.
Totally. And guys like, I sit next to Tony Gonzalez and he talks about it all the time. Jeez, these guys, there's no threat. You don't get hit. And he's right.
Yeah.
And he's right.
Well, it's funny. You're talking about the wide receivers and Rice. When I was growing up, Cliff Branch was like the best deep threat. And he probably had 50, it's like 50 catches a year because nobody threw, but every time he caught one, it was 20 yards. And we had Stanley Morgan, who I feel the same way about him. I think he's a Hall of Famer because if you prorate his numbers to what they would be now, he'd be like 90 catches and 1,500 yards a year, 1,700 yards a year, 12 touchdowns.
Well, you look at Cliff's playoff numbers, and here's the litmus test for me. What's the first thing you have to address on Sunday night or Monday morning when you're putting together a game plan? If it's LT, if it's Aaron Donald, if it's, fill in the blank.
Gronk.
If it's Deion
Gronk's
Sanders,
another good one.
Whoever it is. I actually believe that Cliff was a guy that he changed coverage because he was at one point maybe the fastest person on the planet.
Yeah.
Think about that. It's a big planet. A lot of people. Cliff Branch, it's like some guys throw the ball like John Elway throws the ball to you on a deep out. You can hear the ball whistle. You can hear that with guys like, the kid in Buffalo. You can hear it with guys like, the guy in Kansas City. There are guys that just can throw the shit out of the ball. And there's wide receivers that throw the fear of God into defenses. And Clifford was that. He was definitively that. And he made that offense go because our offense from the moment Al took over was all about verticality. It was all about threatening the deep portion of the field to open up everything else. I mean, I remember when Marcus Allen led the league in rushing, I think he made the statement, that'll never happen again.
Right. Well, I remember when Moss showed up in New England, it was the same thing. He changed the geometry of our team where it was like, oh my God. And Brady was like, he won the lottery. It's like, my God, everything's open underneath now because they're so terrified of Moss. Everybody's shifting to his side and all that stuff. The reason I brought up the GOAT stuff, because you played with Bo. I did a 30 for 30 about him, I'm going to say 8-9 years ago. I think you were in it. I
wrote the forward in his book.
Is he the most talented running back? If we had to say who is the most, I'm just saying pure talent, DNA for the position.
He's the most physically gifted.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I couple things. One, we had our offensive day was Thursday, our defensive day was Wednesday, and offensive day I'd go behind the huddle and I'd sit on my helmet and I'd watch. And we had our mini defensive period, but it was offensive day. And Bo came in and they give him a quick pitch and all you see is ass and thighs. And it's like, he's not only all that, eating potato chips and eating a burger and not being in the weight room. He's running a 4.2. There was an audible gasp on the road. I think it was a play down in New Orleans. We were down in New Orleans and we ran a one-man reverse where the entire offense goes to the right. We pitch to Bo. He takes 3 hard steps, plants, reverses field, the backside tackle, releases inside and peels back. So it's essentially a one-man reverse with the tackle. There was an audible gasp in the stadium. You go, I've never heard that in a stadium.
Wow.
He was amazing. He was a remarkable talent. And it was, because he got hurt. I shattered my hand the same week he blew his hip out. And we went up to Buffalo. It was 25 below. We got beat 58-3. And, you fly home trying to kill the pain and go right to the doctor. And poor Bo, he was, never the same.
Speaking of those stories like that Saints story, the Super Bowl, the lost great play of when the Pats lost to the Giants the first time. It was 3rd down. Brady rolls out to the right. And basically he's like, our best chance here is a 75-yard touchdown on the fly to Moss. Giants know they're going to do it. And Moss is just running full speed. It's the greatest thing I think I've ever seen in person on a football field. And Brady throws it as far as he can. And Moss is going so fast, he kind of like mistimed the jump by remember that? 1/3 of a second, and it ends up, and the Giants broke it up. But it was there, and it was wow.
You know what the killer was? The killer was Eli Manning avoiding 5 defenders.
Ugh, don't get me started.
Spinning and wielding and
all the holding penalties
up here, and, and makes the throw, and it's like, Michael,
it just wasn't meant to be.
It could never happen again. The catch,
Eli
it was
ridiculous.
Doing what he did, the blown coverage at the end of the game. It wasn't meant to be.
It's funny though. I do feel like they outplayed us in that game. The second Giants Super Bowl bothered me more because I just thought we were better, and I didn't think the Giants played that well. Gronk was hurt, but that was one where I felt like they stole that. The other one, they kind of kicked our ass.
The defensive front was the MVP in the one game where they kicked your ass. It was the defensive front and it was interesting because their philosophy was, and it was a new philosophy. It was like Dallas and San Francisco started the rotation thing. I never came off the field. Dallas and San Francisco started the rotation thing where you play four plays, 5 plays, the next guy comes in and you take a blow and you come back in. The Giants were the first team that I saw that got all 4 of their best pass rushers on the field, where Tuck moves from end into tackle, and Michael's there, and OC's there, and they're just getting their 4. They don't care where they're lining up.
Yeah,
it's their 4 best pass rushers. And I think it was interesting because I think the first Super Bowl we covered, and when looking at the game on film, watching the previous 3 games of St. Louis and the Rams and all that, I said, there's no way that the Patriots can beat them. There's just no way. They refused to run the ball. And they played right into what the Patriots wanted to do defensively. They took away what they wanted to take away, which Bill always does. And they were their own worst enemy. It was
our running. We didn't have the running game anymore. Morris got hurt during that season, and it was gone.
Yeah. It was hubris. It was, the arrogance of, we're creative. We're going to just be creative, and damn the torpedoes, and just full steam ahead. And I thought that was an issue. But conversely, I thought in that game, you just have to run the ball. You can't just throw, and put your offensive line in position to block that front with those 4 guys.
Right.
You play into the strength of what that team was.
Football's weird. Like sometimes you can feel it early where you're just like, oh man, we don't have control of the steering wheel in this game.
Hey, look,
the car is just taking us in places I don't want to go right now. And you know when it's happening.
But hold on. Let's talk Atlanta, New England.
Right. That's the flip side.
Okay. So Chris is on 3-4 trips, and he's on his way in the car going down to Richmond to take a trip down to Dallas. He's talked to Atlanta. He's talking to, 2 or 3 other teams. But I remember he was on his way down to Dallas, and Bill calls. And, I think music plays when Bill maybe it's John Facenda, I don't know. If Bill calls and says, I want you, it's
like dun 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 dun.
Yes. And I had said to Chris, I said, why are you playing? You've made all the money that you could ever want to make. Why are you playing? He said, I want to win. And I said, okay, let's look at it objectively. And this was just my perspective. It wasn't Chris's perspective. My perspective was, you love the head coach down in Atlanta. Great. I like him too. Dallas is an intriguing situation, but you look at the last AFC East division championships over the last 10, 12 years. You look at Super Bowl appearances. You look at Super Bowl championships. You look at Bill. And I hadn't been in the building, but had an idea of what it was all about. And talked him out of going to one or two places. And, I don't know that I talked him out of it because Chris said, Chris is going to make it his own mind.
Right.
But here I was. I mean, I can't help you with your trigonometry, but I think I can help you with maybe some football stuff here. And we're doing the game, and we did the first 2-3 hours downtown, and I was fine. And then we walked in the stadium, and it hit me like the humidity in July at Logan Airport when you get off the plane.
Right.
It was like, my son's playing in the Super Bowl. It was like, oh my God, I'm so friggin' nervous. And I talked him into going to New England. And now they're down 28-3.
Oh man.
I'm the worst father in the world.
I didn't know the story.
Oh my God, it was terrible. It was horrible. I felt it was the worst feeling I've ever had in my life. And I've had some bad moments growing up and the whole thing. This was the worst. I'm the worst father in the world. The only thing I could help my son with is a total catastrophe. Not only are they going to lose, they're going to lose in epic fashion.
Yeah, embarrassing.
It's 28-3. Terry Bradshaw, who's a savant, turns to me and says, because I'm quiet. When I get nervous or I get angry, I get quiet. And I'm standing there in the end zone, and I'm off by myself. And he knows me. We've been together for 27 years. Terry knows me really well, and he's known Chris since he was 9 years old.
Yeah.
So Chris grew up with Uncle Terry. He's like Uncle Buck. He's like the dysfunctional uncle. And he says, look, man, don't worry about it. They're going to go no huddle. Tom's going to chuck it all over the yard, and it's going to be fine. And I'm like, Jesus, how could he possibly know this? Sure enough. That moment after the game, and Chris is on the set, Hall of Fame, Super Bowl, for me, nothing compares to that.
Wow.
Your son just won a world championship. And for a guy who played in a dimly lit mall in St. Louis.
Right.
And had 40 plus sacks in 4 years.
Anonymity. Yeah.
If a tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, not in St. Louis. And, I ran out of things to say to him on Sunday nights. He wanted so badly to win. He wanted so badly to compete for a championship. And to be able to do that and then come back the following year and go to Philadelphia, which was a better scheme for him and probably a more enjoyable circumstance from a scheme standpoint. And, the whole parade and the whole thing was it was a magical time. We had a great time.
I've told Chris his Philly Super Bowl was my least favorite of the two Super Bowls. That was the one I enjoyed the less. I had a question about, you've been doing this studio show forever now. 27 years?
We're going to die on the set. 27, 28 years. Yeah.
So I did 2 years on NBA Countdown with 4 people. And the mechanics of a show and how it works. I was so fascinated by just everything about it. About like in the NBA case, we'd have a half hour, 5-minute segments. Everybody's got to at least get their one in. You can't hog the ball too much because then you're cutting into someone else's time.
Yeah, you're going to cost the number 4 guy.
We had the 5th guy come in a couple times, and it was a nightmare. Now it's like now you got 4 guys standing around. It's impossible to interact. You guys have had 5 for a while, and
it depends. We have it's Terry, Michael, Jimmy, and me.
Right, but then you'll have the ones with Menifee where you'll have 5 in there.
Kurt's the host.
Yeah,
but Kurt's really like a classic point guard distributor.
Right, but that could go badly in the wrong hands. So you have that factor. Yes. Then you have the 4 guys he's got to set up.
You can't have a point guard that's like who's my man down in Houston, Russell Westbrook, who's great, who's dynamic, and you love watching him, but he's not a point guard.
But most people, when they have that job, they don't do that. I may or may not have had experience with
Kurt. Kurt's one of the smartest people I know. He's really, really dedicated to knowing the game and goes to training camp and converses with a lot of different players and coaches. And
well, he knows he's there to make you guys look better. That's his job. Yes. He's a point guard.
Yeah.
But how do you figure out how does everybody eat at the table? Like, do you have shows where it's like, oh man, I just didn't say enough because fucking Bradshaw was just babbling about Brady for 5 minutes.
I have to tell you, everyone on that set has a reason to kind of peacock up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of Super Bowls, there's a lot of Hall of Fames, and Michael was the latest kind of addition for us, and we couldn't have computer generated a better guy.
Right.
Here's the one thing it starts with: respect and the knowledge that no one on that set is going to lift themselves up at your expense.
Yeah.
On live television. There's a trust there. And also the nuance of I understand when to kind of interrupt Terry. I understand, in another sense, not to interrupt Jimmy, because Jimmy's a rhythm guy. He's start to finish, and once he makes his point, that's fine. Then you can do what you got to do. Michael, you can kind of go back and forth with. Terry, there's a point where he's into a farm animal and he's making some kind of analogy that, God knows what. And he's the kind of the white Charles Barkley. He's really amazing. But we have a section. It's section 105, and it's Terry, Michael, Jimmy, Howie. And we kind of know the topic of what we're going to discuss, each one individually, but we're not a big rehearsal show. We do things live. And the spontaneity, I think, and I'm not coaching other groups, and I'm not, critiquing other people at all. I just think when you over rehearse, it's canned.
You're preaching to the choir. This was my big argument over and over again with ESPN. It was like, just give us the topic. Just let us go. We all know basketball.
My favorite part of the show is the OT, which is the post game.
Right, because you can't script that.
You can't script it. You fly by the seat of your pants. And here's the trick. We know football.
Right.
So it's not like you're asking me about investments or, architecture. I can talk to you about football all day long. I have a wealth of knowledge that's of no consequence to anyone.
I think TV producers, sometimes they feel like they have to justify their job. And
we've had 2 great producers.
Or they have the boss above them who's trying to justify his job. Like, well, what's the rundown? What was it? And it ends up being overthought, where, like you just said, it's like, hey man, we have a bunch of rings and Hall of Fame on the stage. We're good. Just push us in the right directions.
And people who are comfortable being on TV.
Yeah.
And comfortable with each other.
And won't sell each other out.
And there's, I have to tell you, we caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And I laugh from 5:30 in the morning when I get there till 5:30 at night when I leave. I mean, my wife makes fun of me. Anything Terry says is funny, and it is. He's hilarious. I mean, he's like that what you see on TV is a scaled down version of what he is offset. And the chemistry is great. He and I couldn't be any more different. Yeah. I'm from Boston. He's from Louisiana. I'm Catholic. He's Baptist. He's been divorced 3 times. I've been married 40 years.
You have your teeth.
Well, yeah. I mean, some of them. He's the big brother I never wanted. He really is. He's remarkable.
That phrase, not playing with a full deck. How many cards are in Terry's deck at this point?
Hey, let me tell you something. He's sold that Jed Clampett, Beverly Hillbillies. I'm going to go out to the cement pond and do my gazintas. 3 goes into 4, right. 4 goes into 8. He's taken that all the way to the bank. He's one of the smartest people I know. He's the guy that I don't care what he's been through the night before. I played with guys like this.
Yeah.
I played with the Raiders with guys like this. They could disappear for 2 days. Ball gets snapped, they're ready to play. And Terry is 28 years. When that light comes on, my boy goes.
Well, it's funny that there's like multiple generations of football fans now who have no idea that he was such an important quarterback. Because when I was growing up, it was Staubach and Bradshaw, and that was it. And that was the argument, and that's what we talked about.
Terry beat the Cowboys, had his best games. And Terry will tell you, he said, look, it's like Troy.
Yeah.
If Troy played in a different offense, Troy would break, so many records. But Troy might not have 3 Super Bowls.
True.
That's the deal. And Troy's about winning. Terry's about winning. Terry would throw 22 balls in a Super Bowl.
You played 13 years. Was that too few or too many or just right?
I got to like operation number 8. And Chris was about 8 years old. And, it was kind of one of those deals where I didn't have the ability to not be 120% a football player.
Yeah.
And not that I was present, but I wasn't present, if that makes sense, as a dad. And I wanted to be that. And it was the best decision I ever made. I coached high school football for 8 years, coached Little League baseball for 8 years, was always there and tried to be as anonymous and as in the corner and off to the side as I possibly could be, because I'm very mindful of it being about them and not about me, which is hard to do. But it was the best decision I ever made. It was great.
Plus, you got to make Broken Arrow, which I still think holds up. It's a good action movie.
It was fun. I was supposed to be there for, I think it was 2-3 weeks. It was sold to me as 2 weeks. And
just look mean.
Yes, exactly. John Woo kept coming in my trailer and saying, "We make you bigger, you John Wayne." And the next thing I know, I'm there for 3 months.
And then you made a bunch of movies. You were kind of dabbling in this.
The problem was, here was the problem. I made Broken Arrow, and Fox had a preemption kind of clause in the contract where if another deal came in, they had 5 days or 10 days or whatever it was, right of first refusal to match the deal. So Disney came to me with a post-apocalyptic movie that what I think was like a $30-40 million movie and a big budget movie. And Fox took me off of it to do Firestorm, which had an unfinished script. And, they didn't have a director yet. And they told me we were going to shoot it during the season. So I went from the set on Sunday nights, hopped in a commercial plane up to Vancouver, went through customs, sprinted to the hotel, got to bed, got up at 5:30 in the morning, went into the woods and shot 5 days a week, and we'll go back to LA. That was the point where, it's like Diane said to me one night, she said, "Why are we doing this? Is it ego?
What's the upside?
Money?" Yeah. I mean, why do you need this? And when it gets put to you in those terms, and here's Diane who, went to law school at USC. We went to Villanova together, practiced law for 6 years out in LA. And then after our third son was born, made the decision selflessly to say, I'm going to pack it in and I'm going to be a full-time 24/7 mom.
Yeah.
That's a great sacrifice. Now, I've played 13 years and it's all about me and it's all about football. At the end of the football, you think, well, it's time for me to kind of hold up my end of the bargain here and do a couple of the carpools and do all that. And then that movie Firestorm popped up, and it was kind of a wake-up call for me to say, I can't be away from home for 3 months.
Yeah.
The kids have set up a ramp and they're driving their bikes into the pool, and my wife has no shot at my 3 boys. Imagine my 3 boys without me there for 3 months.
Oh,
it's
my God.
Chaos.
Yeah.
It's chaos. There's multiple trips to the emergency room. It's dogs sleeping with cats. It's mass hysteria.
I don't think you needed to totally walk away. I think you could have done like a season on 24 as like the FBI director. I'm not sure I trust. Right. Like you didn't have to like totally walk away. You could have dabbled.
Here was the thing though. When I would go from Fox and I would get the first flight home, and I'd try to be a team stretch on Monday when Chris played and when Kyle played and when Howie played. That's over 8 years. So it's kind of hard to fit things in when you're doing that. And then it's baseball and coaching Little League Baseball in the spring. And, Little League Baseball, it's practice every night. There's 2-3 games a week. So where do you fit it in? You have to make a choice. And I don't regret the choices that I've made at all. All
right. Well, you would have been fun to see on 24 as the evil FBI guy once. Last question. This is quick answer. Should I let my son play football? He's almost 13 and he's built like a brick shit house and wants to play.
It was interesting because when Chris came to me and said he wanted to play, and I remember it was one of those conversations that husbands and wives have laying in bed when the lights are out. Chris wants to play. And my wife said, oh, don't worry. He'll get his nose bloodied and he'll come home and he won't want to play. And boy, was I wrong.
Wow.
It's up to your son. And here was the thing that I felt comfortable with it, making the decision about our kids. It was the one thing that I could do. I could make sure they learned how to play the game the right way. They learned how to prepare. If your son is passionate about it, I would start out with flag football and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
And that's where they are now. I think a lot of young youth football is all kind of because of the COVID thing stemmed into flag football, which if he enjoys it, God bless him. And if he wants to play piano, God bless him.
But this is good advice, Howie Long. I'm glad we finally did this. This was it's fun. Good to see you, and I'm glad you're still cranking away on TV. It's always good to see you on Sunday as I'm trying to figure out 19 bets at the same time, fix my fantasy lineup.
You know what? It ought to be illegal that we get paid to do what we do.
All right. Say hi to everybody at Fox. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, partner.
All right.
Take care.